Welcome, everyone, to another spectacular episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond, and oh my God, I am so excited because when I bring people back that I can't get enough of, I'm like jumping up and down and get all excited, and then I have to be prepared, which sometimes I'm not, as listeners need to know. So I'm going to give you the quick rundown on this amazing person who is obviously a part strategist, part storyteller, part English to English translator. She is an expert who helps drive action with other people's amazing ideas and gets them to fly, basically. She's an incredible leader, and her unbelievable book called Find Your Red Thread, Make Your Big Ideas Irresistible is out. Most notably, of late, very recently, like this week,
yes,
Thinkers 50 has put her on the radar for the top 30 management thinkers to watch in 2022. But we've known this because if you're a Thrive Lab listeners, she's been on. So therefore, you know she is the idea whisperer and the most amazing person, Tamsen Webster. Tamsen, how are you?
I'm so well, Lou. How are you?
I'm spectacular for a lot of reasons. I got the opportunity to wake up this morning and I said, wow, I'm in like this Florida location, which is totally new for me here. I'm getting used to it. But I said, hey, it's all going to be good because we're going to talk to Tamsen, who when I'm going to say this, that when your book came out last year, there's very few, I get a lot of books, as you can imagine on the show. There's very few that I like raced to go get because I from your episode, from everything that you've done, the way that you communicate your message and help people basically while you're on this program, move onward and upward and helping them really capitalize their messages is so awesome. And you did such a great job. So I want to start off with just kudos to you.
Thanks. I am very happy with how the book turned out. I'm very glad that it's done. There was that famous line, I forget who says it, but I'm very glad to have written it. Like, I don't like writing. I like having written. It's
okay.
Done now. Yes.
I said this to you beforehand, and listeners need to know she's got so many things going on. When I asked her this question, her head just like kind of spun a little bit. I want to catch up with the listeners to hear what you've been focused on most recently, whether it's the message that you're delivering or the work that you're doing with your clients. Can you share with that to start things out?
Yeah, I mean, so and it is a range of things. I mean, I think the what I'm seeing definitely in the marketplace right now is people really wanting to know what is it that turns, like, what makes that difference? Like, what is the thing that really just makes something irresistible, that makes inaction impossible? So I am doing a lot of work right now, really curious about how, like, what is it that moves someone from going, oh, I see, to, oh, I agree. And I'm seeing that a lot with my clients who are, when I'm working with them on messages, they're particularly focused right now on things like overcoming cost objections and, communicating urgency. So there's a lot of those things where it's like, how do we just get people across the finish line? So I'm having fun diving in and researching that and helping my clients figure that out for their own messages.
Tamsen, we're recording this at the beginning of the year, 2022. And I know a lot of organizations, they come up with the ideas for what they want to do for this year. And obviously there's like a prioritization piece of that. Do you help people get their priorities in what they need to focus on to make their main idea come out? Because a lot of people have a lot of ideas on what they want to deal with. Is prioritization something that you can help them with?
It's not my main thing. I mean, generally, I just find that I enjoy the work more when someone already is like, this is the thing. This is the thing I want to get out there. This is the thing I'm really passionate about. Because doing the work to make a really great message is work. I mean, it does mean that you have to dive in. And I did in the past spend a little bit more time helping people figure out what that idea or what that priority should be. But more often, I much prefer the work where someone says, this is the thing, and where the work that we're doing together is to sharpen that thing and pull out the most powerful piece of it. So sometimes what's interesting is someone might come with something that isn't necessarily, the main priority that they're working on, but it's an idea or a message they're trying to get out. And then after we do the work, it becomes the priority. So that's fun when someone goes, oh, I thought I was just developing, this message, let's say, for this kind of, this stage of a decision journey with a particular vertical of ours or whatever. And then they're like, but actually, now that we've done this, we need to go back and fix our whole homepage because this really represents what we do in a much more powerful way than we're doing it right now. So that's my favorite, is when you come in with a very tactically focused, hey, let's work on this because this is a priority. But what comes out of it ends up being so powerful that it starts to drive other ones. That's the most fun.
So this is something that's really interesting because you yourself have been getting your message out, and that obviously was the book. But not only that, even the way that your website and everything that you have, all your communication has been updated, tweaked since the last time you've been on the program, and probably even more frequently than that. In that process, when you become the subject, as opposed to helping the people to do that, who do you turn to get yourself focused on that stuff? Or do you?
This is gonna say, this sounds, I focused to, I built my process, the red thread, to solve my own problem, really, and my own repeated problem of, I hate a blank page. I hate like a blinking cursor. I hate not knowing where to start. So in the process of updating my own website, I was like, well, let me just live the process that I tell everybody else, which is, that your message should start with what question is your audience asking, and it should walk through what their current choices are, and it should eventually arrive at, oh, okay, well, if you agree with all those things, then here's the answer, and we're the ones that present that answer. So I had fun actually when we redid the website and prep for the book launch, because it's very much like a choose your own adventure. I'm probably dating myself with those novels. But it really is designed to, it's a series of questions. It's a, like, here's what I do. Here's the question I answer. Do you want the answer to that question? And then you say yes or no, and it pops you a different point. So I live a very meta life, Lou. I think it's just part of those things. If your work is based on a structure and a framework for figuring out what your ideas are and how to articulate them, doesn't it make sense to use that framework? So I do that. There are some occasions though where I need somebody else to step back. So if I'm doing, let's say, a different kind of talk, I'll consult with our mutual dear friend Tammy Evans, because she's amazing at directing talks. If I'm trying to figure out, how does this work in a really corporate perspective, then that, I'll bounce that off of my friend Neen James. And then I have a friend up in Canada who actually does work quite similar to me. So there's those rare times when I'm like, okay, I just need another perspective on what is the idea that's the most powerful one here. And in those cases, I talk with Michelle Nuret, who's my other go-to person.
So this is going to be interesting, and this is going to be applicable because I'm dealing with this with one of my customers right now, and I have a feeling you see this every day. So it's going to be an interesting avenue, and a lot of our listeners who are entrepreneurs and thought leaders, for the last several years, there's been this whole avenue of playing bigger, if you would, right? Is stepping in and trying to become that leading person and coming up with the idea of where things are. I've seen this. I want to see if you have too, and that is that to come up with the big idea is actually sometimes the biggest hurdle, because a lot of people get in their own way. Yeah. And what I wanted you to share with our listeners here, what are some of the most common hurdles, or at least the things that you're seeing when people are trying to come up with the big idea, when they want to play bigger, do all the things they need to do, that is really the first thing they got to get over, because then the rest can then flow into the process that your red thread is all about.
Yeah. I call it the 3 Ds, right? Like, you never want to score a D on anything, but there's really like 3 Ds that'll get in your way. And I refer to those as the details, deletions, and disconnects, as what gets in the way of people's big idea. At least in the articulation of it. So in the articulation of it, right, a lot of times what happens is people get really way down in the details. They skip to, the analogy I use is that they describe, much like you would never give directions to somebody who's first visited your city in the same way that you would give to a local. They kind of use local language to talk about their ideas to people who are essentially foreign visitors to it. And a lot of that comes down to detail. We jump right into how it works and all of this without ever setting the stage of why it's important in the first place and how it fundamentally delivers on something that people are already looking for, but haven't yet found. So the details are a big piece. The deletions piece, I think, is that a lot of times, and I do see this with just even coming up with ideas, is that sometimes people come up with an answer and there is no question that it answers, right? They're like, well, here's a solution. I'm like, great, but who's it for? Like, what question does it solve for them? And they're like, oh, well, people aren't asking this question yet. And I'm like, okay, but unless we can connect it to a question they are asking for, then you're going to really struggle with finding a market for this. So there's a lot of different places that people tend to drop out, but that's a major one. Just making sure that it's solving a problem that people already have. And I think the other thing that people tend to drop out is a inescapable reason, an inarguable reason why not doing the thing that you're doing makes absolute sense. And that's not easy to find necessarily, but that's what people leave out. I think the last one is just disconnects, where it's just they just are missing the market, and they're just not, it's kind of like wishful idea creation. Like, I wish people would want this. And it's like, yeah, it's a lot easier to sell to people who actually want a thing. I mean, you can sell them a new type of thing, but if they don't actually know that that's what they're looking for, or even, they're not looking for something in that solution, that can be troublesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations forget to ask the most important people, their customers, their prospects, their clients, as to exactly what that problem is that they need solved, and so often are so stuck in their own, like you said, their own lingo, their own language, their own acronyms. I always love when I step into a meeting and I have no idea what the heck they're talking about, and it's like regular speak for all of them.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
No.
it's a thing that it's sometimes when I work with clients, they're like, well, what do we need to send you in advance? Like, what, you should read this, that, and the other thing and beforehand. I'm like, no. And not because I'm not willing to, but the greatest role that I can often play with my clients is the skeptical, like the uninformed skeptic. The biggest challenge, I think, is that once you come up with an idea, you are already convinced that it's right. But pretty much everybody else that you talk to doesn't start convinced that it's right. And we forget that we have to move them to that agreement that it's the right thing. So being able to come in with those fresh eyes and being able to say, I don't know what this means. This doesn't make sense. I don't understand that language that you're using, is a really powerful tool, I think, that anybody can use whenever they're really trying to figure out, hey, is this idea going to be good? But also, can we explain it in a way that people are going to be able to really hang on to what that power is in it and do something powerful with it?
We'll put all the links to the Find Your Red Thread book everywhere on this lovely episode, all the places we promote. I wanted to ask you a question that I ask a lot of authors that I get on the program. And that is, you went in with an idea of what the book should be about, and it obviously has an impact when the end product comes out. But
Yep.
often the feedback that you get might surprise you. You may have tapped into something that you didn't think you were going to when you put the product out there. Did you encounter something like that?
So it's one of those rare things where I kept my hopes for it narrow, my expectations for it narrow, because again, following what I tell my own clients, like you need to have a very clear understanding of what is the question that you're trying to answer and what is the outcome that you're looking for. Which with my approach can be a bit of a challenge because, in my opinion, of course, everything needs a way to talk about it. So it can apply to all sorts of stuff. But I wrote the book with a clear, narrow focus of, this is for people who need to articulate their ideas. And I know that it has a much broader application beyond that. And so I think what has been most maybe surprising, but certainly most delightful from my perspective, is the number of people who are like, oh, I know you wrote it for this, but I could use it here. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly right. So that's where I'm thrilled, is that the idea was clear enough in one context that people could understand, oh, well, this would work equally well in this other context, which I do use it for these other contexts, but it would have made the scope of the book far too broad.
You love to help with the idea creation. You love to help them get the right message together.
Yeah.
And after a certain period of point of time, you probably move on to another client, or you keep a long-term relationship. But the activeness of what you do,
Yeah.
I always love asking consultants this question: the check back with your customers that have worked with you, and to see how their idea is spawning. Do you do enough of that? And what's your like flavor of that? And you're like, oh, you love with the idea creation, but also seeing how it all came afterwards you worked with them? Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One is part of what I bake into my client engagements already is helping them across the first chasm, right? So, I spent 15 years on the organizational side before I spent the next, now the last 10 years on the agency and consulting side with folks, working on branding and messaging and whatever. And what I would see over and over and over again, whether I was in the agency or I was in the organization that hired the agency or the consultant, is that we'd come up with this great message or this great brand campaign or this tagline, and then it would die because it wouldn't actually get put into place. It wouldn't get into practice day to day. I mean, sure, maybe you do a campaign with it, but the day to day operationalization of that brand just didn't happen. And I don't want that. Like if I'm, these people, these are great ideas that we're working on. We're putting a lot of effort into them. And so one of the things that I bake right into my process is, okay, we're going to come up with the red thread of your idea, but the engagement ends once you've actually used it somewhere. And we've actually developed something like a pitch deck or a keynote description or the outline of a book or something like that. Because I think that's the hardest part, is saying, okay, I understand these concepts of my idea, but unless you really get practice in breaking those concepts apart and in sending them off to the world, I think that's to me the biggest barrier to success. So I make sure that that's already built into most of my engagements. And then I have a process of checking in. I ask my clients for 1 week, 1 quarter, 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter, and 6-month goals. Like, where do they want to be with this message and with this application that we've decided on at those various points? And then I check in at all those points. And just so that we can see what's happening. And yeah, sometimes it's, it spawns something else. That's really not the main point of it, but, and spawns some other engagement. But it's also part of that, leaving an engagement, doing all that work around a message with the kind of built-in expectation and built-in targets of where you want to be with it. So it just feels more real.
So I love when I get a question and I have to read it, because that's like cool when we have interactive people. And I don't know who this person is, but this person's coming from the UK. That's all I get. Who knows? The question here goes to Tamsen, and that is, have you ever helped someone come up with their irresistible idea, but then kind of second guessed how your approach went? Okay, that's a good one. Did you ever second guess the work that you provided them and getting them to the message you delivered for your idea?
Let me see. Anytime that I've adapted my process so that it wouldn't happen again. So part of what I was just talking about, of like, we work until it's applied somewhere, was an adaptation from, okay, we came up with something, and then when I saw it out in the world, I'm like, that's not the idea that we came up with. So let's adjust that way. So that's been a big part of it. But I think the biggest thing that I run into is not that somehow the approach doesn't work. It's that it comes from I think from people's, one of the big traps that people fall into is they look for the idea they think will sell more than the idea that they can't not put out there into the world.
Yeah.
And when
Double
that
negative.
happens,
Real tricky.
Yeah. Well, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, and sometimes it's an idea that they're afraid to put out in the world. And sometimes it's an idea that they don't see it. So there are the times when, ultimately my job is to help somebody get the idea that they want to put out in the world out into the world. And so I think that, the only thing that ever gives me pangs going through that is that sometimes in the process of developing the idea that the client wants, I see an idea that actually would be a lot more powerful, which I will always tell them. But there are the times when they're like, yeah, I hear you, but this is the thing. And I'm like, all right.
That also becomes, that's like a coaching moment too, right? Because the power of being a great coach and leader and helping someone along is letting them come up with the great idea and let them empower with it, like feeding them with all the tools. We might know the answer, but we don't necessarily want to solve it.
But
We
we
want them
don't
to
really,
solve
right?
it.
Like in
Yeah,
my
we don't.
opinion,
Right.
like in my situation, if I were that person, this idea might be great, but like that's where I've come to with it too. Is like if they don't have, like, you cannot want it more than they do. And so if there's any point where that happens, it's just kind of like, oh, well, that was great. But they don't, like, if they don't want that idea, then my job is to get as excited about the idea that they do want as they are. And um that's an opportunity for me just to double down. And then I treat it like a particularly difficult crossword puzzle, right? It's just like, okay, well, then how do we make this one as powerful as it can be?
Right.
I was like, oh, I like that one. But all right, look, we're going to make this one as powerful as it can be. And so part of that is just, a little bit self-serving, just because I want to leave every engagement feeling like we found the best idea for that person, or for that organization, and an idea that they are excited about. Because if they're not excited about it, then I haven't done my job.
Gotcha. One more fun question here. Where the hell can I get those glasses? That's from a cousin. That's a family member of mine, by the way. My cousin
That's
Robin
awesome.
asking those glasses.
Yeah, they are Montclair. They of the puffy jackets. So you
Oh,
are,
okay.
I don't know. I got them at at Eyes Over Copley here in Boston.
They look
but
good,
are.
is what's
Thanks,
happening.
thanks. But if you
Let's
want the same frames, they're by Montclair.
There we go. Let's do the plug section, and then we're going to do Fun Street the way you've never done it before.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, share with the listeners. I've got it all in the notes here. It'll all come there. Anything new we need to know on the calendar, upcoming events, things like that we should
Yeah,
know
I've got
about?
a,
Yeah.
well, depending on when this comes out, but I
It's
have
going
a
to come
series
out
of them.
next week officially.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Plenty of time. I am launching a 4-hour workshop about the red thread. So it's, so basically it's an event that I used to do live, and it's 4 hours of really digging into, and a great follow on if you've got the book and you're like, okay, I've been working on this, but I really want to just get some kind of live interaction, really hear Tamsen talk through it, be able to ask those questions in real time. That one is coming up, I believe, on February 8th. Let me just double check.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, February 8th. But there's other of that coming up in the future, and you can always see those on my website at tamsenwebster.com/events.
Gotcha. And she's at and Tamsen Webster in most places, and on Twitter,
Yeah.
she's like Tamadeer.
Tamadeer, because that one is old. Yeah, that was
Either that or there's another Tamsen Webster.
well,
like,
no, there is a
internet.
Tamsen Webster, and the account is suspended, and I've been trying very, very hard to get it, like, because I'm literally the only Tamsen Webster in the universe. So I'm like,
yeah, hold on one
I don't
second.
know.
Can I break out the world's smallest violin for somebody named Lou Diamond? I've got actors, singers. I don't need to hear this. I don't need to hear like the Tamsen Webster.
I know, but maybe you understand my frustration then, that
little
like that
bit.
Tamsen Webster isn't available because somebody did something on that account that suspended them, and
Damn
Twitter
them.
won't give it to me. It drives me absolutely nuts. But actually, like, I think it's also a funny story because Tamadeer was like my old AOL handle.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And it's an obtuse reference to a Robert Heinlein novel. So
Okay.
extra points
Gotcha.
for anyone who knows what that is.
No one has put it into the chat window here, but we'll just go with it.
They're like, oh, it must be a play on this character from this book from Robert Heinlein.
All right, so let's do this. Let's do a revamped version of Fun Street here for Tamsen, because Tamsen needs to know how this works. In the past, I've asked you what your favorite movie was. We probably talked about that. But instead of doing your favorite movie,
Okay.
are you into any, like, is there a specific show that you've been streaming over the last 2 years or something like that? That's like one of your favorites, or one that you can't wait to come out. Is that you, or?
Oh, it kind of. I mean, I don't know. Definitely over the last 2 years, like, we've been in a lot of
I know.
rewatching mode, but yeah, there's nothing that I'm like, ooh, that I can think of that I can't wait, like, that's new. I'm always excited for the new Amazing Race when that comes out, and that's like
really?
happening now. Yeah.
I was really bummed. I got to know the Holderness family, and I was so bummed because they were in it, and then there was the delay, and then they restarted it again. I think that's what's going on.
They have restarted, and I don't know. Don't tell me, because I haven't seen the restart yet. So I saw the first 2 episodes before they stopped it, and then I just haven't had a chance to get back, because I watch it with my kids, and my kids get mad if I watch it ahead of them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay.
All right. So we're going to do the speed round here, because I don't think we did the speed round the first time you're on the program. And this is how this goes. Well, we'll see if the answers differ, and if they compare. We'll put them like,
that'd be interesting. Like, how consistent are you, Tamsen?
Okay. I'm going to ask you something. I want the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Most of these things are things that lift you up, motivate you, make you feel good. They basically make you thrive.
Okay.
Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Of late, a song that you love to hear, or one that pumps you up.
I am always pumped up by Jimmy Cliff's "Better Days Are Coming."
Oh, that's a good song.
Yeah.
A favorite food that's not a dessert.
Favorite food that is not a dessert is roasted sweet potatoes. Which I
Like
love
that.
them.
That's awesome. A favorite dessert.
Ice cream in any form.
And is there a particular flavor of all flavors?
No, I mean, my favorite is probably is actually like a mint Oreo. Like that's like a mint cookies and cream is definitely, but there's this local ice cream store here in Boston called JP Licks, and they have a salted caramel cookies and cream, and
that's like elite. That's got to be illegal in like 3 states.
I know. It's so good though. It's so good because I just love a cookies and cream, kind of like most variations of cookies and cream. So summer I tend to like the mint because it just feels very summery, but the salted caramel cookies and cream.
Gotcha. Very good. An activity you wish you did more of.
Ballroom dancing.
An activity you wish you did less of.
For fretting. I fret a lot.
Oh my God. Tamsen Webster, if I were to snap my fingers and you could be anywhere in the world, where are you?
Probably the coast of Cornwall in England.
Really? And have you been often? Have you been often?
I have no, it's been a really long time, which is probably why I'm pining a bit for it. Cornwall is this weird, wild, southwestern tip of England. And there's parts of it like in St. Ives that get the jet stream. So it's actually like can be freakishly warm there. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of the best of a seaside town plus England, plus Arthurian legend, plus beach, plus artist stuff. So it's basically, I don't know. It reminds me a lot of Provincetown, which is another place that I love to go here in Massachusetts. But that's the one that comes to mind first.
Tamsen Webster, the Idea Whisperer. Find your red thread, and everybody check out the books and all the links. We'll put it all there. If you haven't gotten it yet, you're behind. You have to catch up, and I'm going to get on them to make sure that they are, because it's worth it.
Yes.
And as always, spectacular to catch up with you. It's always a pleasure. And thank you again for coming back on Thrive Loud.
My pleasure. It was great to see you, Lou. Take care.
You got it. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.